You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty.
And people deal with them in different ways, and it happens randomly, even to folks that maybe feel like they got a good grasp over it. In the beginning, you're denying yourself the ability to feel what you need to feel and process what you need to process. And as time has gone on over the last 8 weeks, I feel like I hit a low point, and then from that point on, I've started to feel better every day. I've had worse days and good days and all that kind of stuff, but I really try to take a holistic approach to this.
Hi there, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. Today, I am very excited because David Wood, my beloved, my life partner, work partner, my boyfriend, he is here to share a little bit about what's been going on from within him. He was actually my first ever guest on this podcast 1 year ago, and it feels really exciting to have him back. For me, birthdays are a time of year that are kind of similar to like New Year, where you can set some new intentions and it's kind of a natural reflection point. So I figure this is a really good opportunity to kind of intercept with him, glean some thoughts, and we'll just talk about a little bit of what's been going on for him and see if it connects with anything that, you guys are going through too. I know so much of what we share is a common experience, even if it's just little pieces. So anyway, with that, welcome Dave. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on again.
You are welcome. You are my most popular guest.
Backed by popular demand.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because in the past year since you were last on, we've had lots of different guests and have been trying to grow in new ways. And I am glad that we were able to share that and you were kind of able to kick that off.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, it's really cool to see how far you've taken this project with, your podcast and your listeners, and just seeing, people on Instagram tag you that they saw the new episode, they're listening to it. It's really, really cool to see it grow.
It is cool, isn't it? Well, catch us up a little bit. I know that there's probably so much to talk about that this last year has been, but let's start a little bit on the easier side. How are you doing today? How was the past weekend? It was your actual birthday, my 0-degree Scorpio. It's now Scorpio season. How are you doing? Just what do you want to share about the weekend that you had?
The weekend was pretty good. It was my birthday this weekend, and probably for like the last 2 months, I haven't been really, drinking or, doing any sort of bad eating and those sort of things. And this week was nice because I was able to cheat a little bit. We were able to have a beer, and
you were feeling better too.
Ooh, yeah, I was feeling better, and ate pizza, which my stomach definitely isn't agreeing with me. Yeah. But mentally, I felt good enough to do those things, which was really nice. So it was a little refreshing. And then we went on a little bit of a shopping spree, got some new shoes. Yeah, it was awesome. It was really cool. It was laid back, easy, no expectations, just more laid back than last year. Last year I got like 32 presents. I did want to pull a Dudley and just be like, but last year I got 32, and make you get me 33 this year, But for the Harry Potter fans, you'll get that reference. But
yeah, and you definitely got more presents in the end than I thought you were gonna get going into this weekend.
Yeah, I weaseled my way into some presents.
Yeah, exactly. You weaseled. What was your favorite present that you got?
Well, that's tough. I would probably say it's not here yet, but my the Oura ring. Felicia's been rocking the Oura ring for 2 years now? Year and a half?
Year and a half.
Yeah, so that, for those that don't know, the Oura ring tracks your sleep cycles, your temperature, just a bunch of different things that can tell you about like when to push hard, when not to push hard. And given my recent health scares and anxiety, panic, whatever, we don't have a diagnosis, but whatever we're calling it, I really want to focus on making sure that I'm doing everything I can to, give my body the best chance to really perform and feel good, so
absolutely
got an Oura ring, but it's not going to be here till like November 20th, which, shipping delays, it's all good.
Yeah, it'll come in divine time, I'm sure. Speaking of which, for those of you listeners who I've talked a little bit about what Dave's been going through here and there the past 8 weeks or so. But now that we have him here and he can actually speak for himself and share his experience, Dave, do you want to kind of go into the last 8 weeks as far as how would you describe what you've been dealing with? I know you don't have a diagnosis, but do you want to tell a little bit of your story?
Yeah, totally. I think, just to sort of set the context, there's a lot of stress going on in the world with, the pandemic and trying to push forward. And I think a lot of businesses, people, individuals, everyone is trying to get back to this sense of normalcy right now. And, in late July, Felicia and I both had a nasty stomach bug. I was sick for almost a week straight, bedridden sick. And after that, we were traveling to Chicago. So literally a week after, only a couple days after feeling good, we were getting ready to go on a plane to Chicago. So, we're getting ready, we get our gear packed, we get on this plane. There's a lot of nervous energy, around the plane. And I could feel Felicia's nerves. We're sitting in the front of the plane, which we never really sit in the front of the plane, so there's nowhere to put your stuff.
It was the first flight.
Yeah, it was the first flight since the first pandemic for Felicia. It was my third flight because I went home to see my family, which was a whole other can of worms that we probably won't have time for on this podcast. But that was a pretty traumatic experience dealing with, family member addiction and all that kind of stuff. So, but we are on this plane. I can feel the nerves. I'm feeling nervous. I sort of feel like a welling in my stomach / chest. And then out of nowhere, what seems out of nowhere, my heart rate just starts jumping. And, at first it's around 120. And then it keeps shooting up 130, 140, 150, all the way up to 170. And, we're still probably within 30 minutes of takeoff, those sort of things. So, I'm freaking out. I thought I was having a heart attack on the plane. About 3 minutes later, my heart rate starts to come down into the 100s, and then eventually a little bit below 100, but it stayed right around 90 to 100 for a while. And I think that was just due to sheer panic. So we get to Chicago. I'm not feeling good the whole entire time. I'm feeling, really hot, really sweaty, clammy, those sort of things. And this is in the middle of summer too, so it's hard to differentiate. But we eventually get home 3 days later after shooting this wedding, which was an awesome wedding we shot, and we really enjoyed editing the trailer and all that good stuff. But I get home, I decide to set up a virtual appointment with my primary care doctor, which I do. He says, hey, it's probably just anxiety. I tell him about the heart rate spike and, some of my concerns. Anybody that's listened to the news with COVID and the vaccines and all that kind of stuff, there's concerns out there with, a very small number of people getting, inflammation after a vaccine shot. So I was freaking out about that a little bit. And then about a week later, we were in a car going to scout out a venue that was getting set up. So we're doing sort of the final walkthrough. And on my way home, another heart rate event happened where my heart jumped to the 160s. This one was a little scary because we were in rush hour traffic and I was hyperventilating, which caused my hands, arms, and legs to go numb. Again, I thought I was having some sort of stroke. So throughout the week, I tried working out and just getting back to my normal thing, but I fell into this health anxiety where I was reading about every possible thing that could go wrong. Everything, including the electrical system of the heart, to inflammation of the heart, to heart failure, to heart disease, all these things. And it immobilized me in a state of fear that I've never been in and never experienced in my entire life. To the point where I was having breakdowns and literally crying for hours on end just because I didn't know what was going on with me. I felt like, do I have heart disease? Do I have heart failure? Now, 2 months removed from that situation, it's been over 30 days since my last, sort of episode, where I had to go to the ER, which, I guess the silver lining and the good news here is all my results so far as blood work, x-rays, echocardiograms, EKG stress tests, these are all the gold standards to say, do you have something wrong with your heart? They have all come back fine. And we're sort of in the final stages of understanding, is this a heart issue, which by all means, with the results we've gotten right now, it doesn't seem to be. There's probably one or two things that could be still, like an electrical issue where basically, your heart has a little drummer and that dictates how your heart beats. But different parts of your heart also have drummers, so the different chambers. And if those are off, that can be an issue with the electrical signal causing palpitations or heart rate, those sort of things. So there still could be something like that, but I'm on a cardiac monitor, been on that for the last 30 days. So if there was anything like that, we would see it on the cardiac monitor once we get the results back, which will probably be like the first or second week of November. So, but the good news is I think we ruled out all the big scary stuff like heart attack, like heart disease, heart failure. Those things have sort of all been ruled out, which is definitely relieving as someone has never gone through anything like this in their life before. It's really relieving, especially after reading on the internet, like every possible thing. And, for those that listen to the podcast, I'm sure that you're familiar with the WebMD joke where if you read anything on WebMD, it's always cancer. You have pain in your leg, or you have pain in your chest, or you have this, that, and the other. And
it's something terminal.
Yeah, it's something terminal. So, like for the first 30 days, like I was barely, like I was so, I'm not even going to like pretend like I was sick. I was literally sick. Not only sick with how my body was feeling, but mentally sick. Like I was frozen in fear. It was the scariest thing I've ever gone through in my life, and still going through it. I think I've gotten a lot more bravery as time has gone on, but I think that's partly due because the information we have now has sort of ruled out anything that's going to be terminal or long-term or chronic. And we're actually thinking that it's probably more of a digestion thing, which is so crazy how just a little, I feel like I'm a part doctor now. But the vagus nerve,
He's not.
I'm not at all. Don't, if you're having any issues
health-wise. He's just sharing his own experience.
Yes. If you are having any issues health-wise, like, I feel like it's worth saying this because any issues health-wise, or this resonates with you, like, oh, I have chest pains too, or I have palpitations, go see your doctor. Like, don't take anybody's advice that's not a medical professional. The advice might be good advice, it might be sound advice, but everybody is different. So see a doctor. Don't, like, I'm just purely sharing my experience of what I went through. But sort of back to the fascination with the stomach and the heart is it's connected by the vagus nerve, which vagal or vagus comes from the Greek word of like wandering. It's the wandering nerve, so it goes through all your entire body.
It's your biggest nerve, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So the crazy part is if you have stomach issues, which is connected to your vagus nerve, you can actually have like simulations of chest pain that imitate like heart attack. You could have heartburn, chest discomfort, chest pain, stabbing pain, like all these things.
The idea is that it's bumping up against the vagus nerve and it's sending like fight or flight responses to your body. Yes,
exactly. So it's messing with your,
your sympathetic nervous system.
And, if I had an educated guess, that's what I'm dealing with is my nervous system was completely shot from stress, from recovering from being sick, trying to get back on the grind, those sort of things. I think that's probably
a big portion.
I think if I had an educated guess, that's probably what I ran into with experiencing these heart palpitations and all that kind of stuff. But as of, I would probably say like the last 3 weeks, I've been, since October, honestly, it's since like I went and got an echocardiogram. And for those that don't know, an echocardiogram is something that shows is the valves in your heart pumping blood correctly? Are they the right size? Those sort of things. So it's a very crude measurement, but it gives a really good understanding on whether your heart's structurally sound or not internally. And ever since I got my results back from that, I feel like a lot of the anxiety, a lot of the stress came back because that sort of ruled, along with blood work and that sort of ruled out like heart failure, anything along those lines, which is it was just a sigh of relief. And now, I can definitely sense triggers coming on, when I feel them, but I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more present. I still don't feel 100%. I still feel like there's something going on with me. But the good news is as time has gone on over the last 8 weeks, feel like I hit a low point, which was probably like the 15th of September. And then from that point on, I've started to feel better every day. Definitely have had worse days and good days and all that kind of stuff, but I really try to take a holistic approach to this and not just think it's like, oh, it's a heart issue, or oh, it's this. I'm in therapy for myself, which
that you start. Yeah. I would just want to be clear with people. Is like, what are some of the things that you've done to get yourself through the health anxiety piece?
Let's sort of just talk about that. So we talked about the overarching stuff of here's like the health anxiety, the panic disorder, all that kind of stuff. And, one of the things I started doing, taking a multivitamin, right? Like those sort of things. So the practical things, right? Things you can do, making sure you drink enough water, which is really hard sometimes. But there's a huge portion of this that comes back to mental health. And one of the things that I couldn't ignore is that, besides being sick before the trip to Chicago, what else was I dealing with? Well, I was dealing with a extremely traumatic, like, home visit to my home to see my family. Like, and, just for context, like, I come from upstate New York. Upstate New York is riddled with, hard drugs like meth and heroin and all those sort of things. And unfortunately, family members of mine that I'm really close with have fallen into addiction, struggle with addiction, have been fighting addiction. Doesn't make them bad people. I love them to death and they're amazing. But being absorbed back into that world where it's constant worry of like, am I going to wake up and this person's OD'd, or, are they in jail, or are they, this, that, and the other, it's just this constant state of like fear for that person that they are not in charge of their own welfare. And it's almost like they're out of control. And that really sucks to sort of be there, to try to love unconditionally. But in the back of your mind, know that like how they're living their life could affect you. It could affect them. It could affect their livelihood. And you have no control. You have no control over that at all. And, my approach has been like, just try to love unconditionally. And that's hard. It's easy to say that just love them for who they are, even if they're an addict and all this kind of stuff. It's like, well, it's really hard when you know that like somebody's doing something that could cause their life to end, or ruin their life, ruin their family's lives. It's like, those are hard things to come to terms with. So just on that piece right there, we knew that like therapy would be really good for me, and like specifically cognitive behavioral therapy. So these are things where your mind is wired a certain way based on your previous trauma, those sort of things, your upbringing. You see a therapist and they work on things like mindfulness, also known as meditation. They work on like EMDR, so almost like rewiring the brain on how to think, how to drop back into your body when you feel like you're floating out in this world of panic and anxiety. And that's been really, really helpful. And my therapist specifically has been fantastic at really helping me navigate some of these huge triggers for me as far as anxiety goes. And yeah, well, you're about 6 weeks in? Yeah, 6 weeks in. 5 or 6? I think this week will be 6 weeks. And so that just goes to say, like, obviously if you're having any sort of issues, like, seek help of your primary care provider, but that's just not good enough to do. Like, you can't just be like, well, I went to my doctor and they said everything was okay. A lot of Western medicine fail to realize that like therapy, non-medicinal, non-antidepressant forms of therapy are beneficial and a necessity. They don't think like that. They think like, well, here's a medicine they think you have a symptoms, how can we treat the symptom? And I think that's a huge flaw in our medical system. So I think those people mean well and they want to help you get back on your feet, but their way of thinking is sort of steeped in this medical, pharmaceutical, like whatever you want to call it, just fact around here's how you help someone. Whereas a therapist can really help sort of like, I would say, the root cause issues of what you're dealing with and how that can make a difference in your life. So, I got into therapy. I did actually have like I'm on an antidepressant, which that's helped too, you know.
Well, that was another thing that you had just to give a little context, because I'm the person that experiences alongside of you. Yeah. I'd say, you know, you were saying like that September 15th was kind of like the peak, the worst of it. And I would totally agree. I would say it was getting really, really bad. And then probably from September 16th for the 10 days that followed were just like the same peak of terribleness. And it was right around then that you really felt like, all right, that's it. I know I need to get these answers. I know that's going to help me with peace of mind. But you also, I think, we're at that final, you hit rock bottom enough to be like, yes, I'm ready to start seeing a therapist. And yes, I'm going to do an antidepressant for now while I'm coping with because it's too much. I need more help.
Totally.
And I think that was so brave of you.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like a lot of, you know, even myself, you know, given my background with, you know, my family's history of addiction and those sort of things, like I didn't want to take medicine, but it was to the point where my fear, my anxiety, and my panic was so overwhelming in my everyday life that
you weren't living.
I wasn't living. I was just in fear. Like I'd wake up from sleep, and then from that point on until I slept again would be this constant, like, is the shoe going to drop? Am I going to have a heart attack? Am I going to go into cardiac arrest? Is Felicia going to be around if something like that happens? Or am I going to like die and then she finds me hours later and, you know, any chance of survival is diminished? You know, it was like thoughts like that were running through my head constantly. So, you know, it's just one of those things where like there comes a point in time when like fighting that battle of like, I don't need help, I don't need this, I don't need that. Like that's where I think medicine, that's where I think those sort of things could help me, I think bring me back down to a level where I was like, okay, now I can like sort of break this apart like it's a mathematical problem, right? Like, okay, like how do we do this? Like, what am I actually experiencing? Am I actually in my body right now, or am I floating out of my body? And what are my triggers? And one of the triggers that I've noticed when my heart would start to race, or, you know, I'd get these palpitations, is I would start reading about something, heart disease, heart failure, you know, vaccine related, whatever it is, like the big scary stuff. And then all of a sudden I would see these symptoms. Like, I think the scariest one, which was confirmed not to be true, so just, you know, was I was reading about heart failure and something called ejection fraction, which essentially means, like, is your heart pumping enough blood for the rest of your body? You know, it was like, well, symptoms are like, you know, dizziness or tired or fatigue or, you know, like abdominal pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have all these symptoms. So I was dead set that I had this form of heart failure. And then when I got my echocardiogram back, that absolutely proved like, you do not have this. So it was things like that were, would cause me to go into these spirals of just severe panic. Like, I mean, like, if anybody listening is like claustrophobic or anything like that, where you literally feel like if you're in a car, you just need to jump out and like get somewhere. I don't even know where you'd go. Or if you're in a closed space and you just feel like you need to like escape, like you go into that level of fight or flight. That's the kind of panic I was triggering myself into on reading all this information. I was calling a telehealth doctor twice a day for 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. It was, you know, I have this new symptom, or, oh, my feet are sweaty and cold. Like, what does that mean? You know, just random things. I was so hyper aware of everything in my body. You know, we even did this thing where I walked up the stairs and I was like, man, my heart's beating out of my chest. And Felicia's like, yeah, you just climbed a flight of stairs pretty fast. And she goes, let me see your Apple Watch. I'm going to put it on and I'm going to see how fast my heart beat, because mine was at like 115 going upstairs. And she put it on the watch, ran up the stairs, and her heart was at, I think like 125 or 130. And she's like, dude, you're totally normal. Like, you're literally looking for something that's not there. And I think I've done a good job in the last 3 weeks moving away from that, since, you know, sort of Felicia told you that peak 10 days is moving away from that. But getting the results was extremely beneficial too. That helped ease my mind. That helped take things off of like, okay, like factually, things that markers aren't showing factually.
Right.
You know, could there still be something wrong? Sure. But like, that would be such a small percentage. That would be so rare. And at that case, I think it goes back to, I think a lot of religious folks, Christians and probably Catholics in particular, practice like the Serenity Prayer, which is, I forget how it goes, but it's...
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah, and I heard that. I think Felicia said that prayer for me. Like,
my mom told you to.
Yeah. Felicia's mom went to the urgent care with me because Felicia drove me there, but, I was panicking, and she was like, I can't go in there right now. Like, just go in and do this thing. So her mom came and sat with me while I was in the urgent care and said that to me, and that, like, really, like, hit home big time. It's like, even if this was something serious, even if it is something serious, like, you have to have the serenity, you have to have the ability to let go of that fear and know whether it's something you can change. So I've been trying to focus heavily on the things that I can change. My diet, can I change that? Yes. Can I change my caffeine consumption? Can I change things that have maybe become a stressor for me that or using as a coping mechanism? You know what I mean? Like, it may be fine to have a beer every night or, a glass of wine, but, like, is that good for my digestion? Is that causing me issues, and is that a stressor on my body in the long run? And those are things that I've been sort of re-examining how I eat.
Well, you've had no choice.
I've had no choice because it was the only thing I could control in this whole entire situation. I couldn't control whether I had a heart issue, couldn't control the palpitations, I could barely control the stress. So the only thing I could control was the diet portion of it. And, I've been able to, lose about 20 pounds from that. I'm starting to sort of regulate back in. My appetite's coming back strong. So now this is like the hard part for me, because I got to be really, I don't want to deny myself the ability to go have a beer with Felicia and go bowling and those sort of things. But, I have to understand that may be a treat. It's not an everyday thing. That may be once a week, might be once a month. And for the majority of my time, I need to make sure that I'm eating good, I'm getting good sleep, those sort of things, because I think that's how you see your way through something like this, whether it's anxiety or physiological or mental. It all plays into the same thing. I'm a firm believer that there is no difference between the mind and body. I know Western medicine likes to look at it like your mind and your body. I think it's all part of the same system, and even science nowadays is talking about how the gut influences how you think, your mood, how you feel. Like, it influences everything. Like, your gut is literally the command center for your brain. And when you think about that, that's a little bit mind-blowing. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you did a beautiful job explaining all of that. There's one more piece I want to pull on just while I have you, because one of the things that you continually went back to the past 9 weeks while you were experiencing all of this is, it's not panic attack, it's not anxiety, or you kept going back to, I've dealt with anxiety, this is not that. This is the first time I've ever dealt with anything like that. And the reason that I want to ask you about that is, what are your thoughts on that now that you've had a little bit more perspective? And two, do you have any advice or tidbits or things that you have perspective on now that you didn't have then while you were kind of facing those thoughts around it, for people that also might experience like their nervous system crash for the first time, or panic that they've never experienced this bad before? Like, what do you wish you would have known before that you know now after having experienced that?
I think the first thing I want to say is, like, anybody that's listening to this that's like, I know what anxiety is, it's not that bad, just suck it up, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, whatever your approach. Like, I call it like the strongman approach, or like whatever, like, just throw that out the window. First of all, like, that's not helpful to anyone, including yourself, because you're denying yourself to feel, or telling yourself you can't feel a certain way because a certain situation has put you in that. So that's not to say that, like, some people can deal with anxiety and stress better than others, but I think that was the biggest thing I learned, is, like, I could remember moments where I thought about people I worked with that had anxiety, and I was like, what is that person freaking out about? Or why is that person so like mentally weak, you know? And, you know, I the first thing I felt was guilt, you know, and I felt guilty for thinking that of people going through extreme anxiety.
But it's natural,
hypochondria,
right? People
whatever.
do think that.
Yeah, for sure. So that's like the first thing I felt, a strong sense of denial that this was not anxiety. And I do want to be clear that like, I do think anxiety and panic were a huge part of this. However, I'm definitely going through something physiological. I'm going through something with my digestion. The heart palpitations are real. Now, whether those were triggered by panic and anxiety is to be determined. However,
it all goes together.
However, with the results we've currently got right now with modern medicine, blood work, stress tests, EKGs, all this stuff is pointing more toward anxiety being the culprit, panic being the culprit.
Or the anxiety from the symptoms the digestion caused in your body and
exactly.
mixed with whatever.
The fear. And, you know, like when you read online, like the plane ride, like I didn't think I was having any anxiety or digestion issues, but we did just come off the week previous of a pretty bad stomach flu. It was like bad. So that could have definitely played a role into it, and it could have caused me to sort of spiral, like, ooh, something's not feeling right in my stomach or my digestion, and my heart starts to race, and I'm like, ooh, I noticed my heart. And then all of a sudden the adrenaline dump you get from that causes you to spiral even more, and you go into that fight or flight, like, oh my gosh, am I going to die?
I think that's like the main thing that's different about what you experienced then is like, yes, people have anxiety attacks all the time. Like there's anxiety about things like you're not feeling good, you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling unsure, you're in fight or flight a little bit. But then a panic attack is that next level where you do feel like you are about to die. Like
it's almost subconscious. You know what I mean? It comes out of nowhere, and that's
what you're dealing with is subconscious that brings on the panic attack.
Yeah, like it's not, you're not aware of like the stressors, maybe, you know, mentally, that are causing you physiological stress in your body. Like I was like when I had that anxiety attack, like I was a little annoyed that like Felicia was just so like focused in the plane, and like it was like one of those things where it's like, why is she freaking out so much? You know what I mean? And like I didn't have this like overwhelming fear of like, oh my gosh, we're in a plane, I'm so scared. Like I didn't. It just came out of nowhere. It literally came out of nowhere. However, after that moment, like I started to be hyper aware of my body, like, ooh, I'm not feeling good, or ooh, I have that welling feeling, that fullness feeling in my stomach, you know? And then from there, I would start to spiral again. I would start to, oh my gosh, am I going to be okay? Or I'd look at my Apple Watch and, you know,
I'm not okay. Look at how not okay I am.
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
exactly.
it's getting worse.
Totally, you know, and I'll have little blips on my Apple Watch where it's like, your heart's at 150, and I'll be like doing dishes, and I'm like, no, it's not at 150, but because I saw that and I'm like, oh my gosh, is my heart like having an arrhythmia? Like what's going on? You know, and then I would start to spiral after that. So, yeah, just to get back to your question though, it's like, you know, panic and anxiety are real things, and people deal with them in different ways, and it happens randomly, even to folks that maybe feel like they got a good grasp over it.
Or people who feel like they're mentally strong, like how you've considered yourself. Yeah. I'm so mentally strong. I don't deal with stuff like that. Yeah,
and I think that's just, it's a poor way to look at it, because, you know, you're denying like I said in the beginning, you're denying yourself the ability to feel what you need to feel and process what you need to process. And I think unresolved trauma leads to panic, you know, and that's, I think that's a fact, you know.
Welcome to 2021.
Yep.
No, I so appreciate that, and I'm so glad that we get to have you on to discuss all of this specifically, because you know, when I've talked about it the past couple of weeks, I've only been able to share it from my side, and it's actually so good to hear it from your side. And I think it has been, you know, if I can put in my own 2 cents about it, like it has been very scary to watch you go through this and to deal with the mixture of what part is mental health, what part is the nervous system not being able to self-regulate right now, the parasympathetic nervous system not being able to function, the need for therapy and maybe an antidepressant and those kind of things. But then also the very real part of it, like what is happening with your heart? Why is this happening to you?
Sure.
What is going on with your digestion? Like, it's been very overwhelming. And I think that if anything that we can share on this topic specifically is sometimes you just have to be brave enough to keep facing it and going through it. And I've been so grateful for this community. We've had so many people reaching out saying like, how's Dave? We're thinking of you. We know how hard this is. And like, that's been invaluable, you know, through this process.
Yeah, it's meant a lot to me. So I just want to like a wholehearted, like, thank you so much for everyone who's messaged me, messaged Felicia, just wondering how I'm doing. Like, it really means a lot to know that like people do care. People, you know, may not talk to every day. You may just know as an acquaintance. I just appreciate you all. All of you are just so amazing. And, you know, I know that we have, you know, brides that listen to our podcast, and we've made adjustments because of my health issues, you know, whether it's flying, couldn't fly to Maine, you know. I wanted to like just thank everybody from the bottom of my heart that has either sent their well wishes or have been completely understanding around what we're going through, what I'm going through, and how it's affected my work, my business, our business, my personal health, my mental health, like every aspect of my life. I've been met with nothing but compassion and complete understanding. So that means a lot. And it's been that's been scary because, you know, when you have people that you don't want to let down, and then you feel like you can't function, it can be really, really, really hard. So I just wanted to say thank you to all those people, and thank you to you who have who's had to sort of put up with the the majority of the panic, and you've done a really good job transitioning into like, you're okay, everything's fine, don't worry about it, to like, I'm here for you, I see you, what do you need in order to feel safe? And that's also been really cool, because that helps when you have someone that you feel like's in your corner. But yeah, you know, that's just, I feel gratitude around everybody that's reached out and has been a part of my journey. And I'm still scared. I still have a lot of fear around this. But you know, I feel a little more braver than I did yesterday. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we've been talking for a while. I just have one last question for you, or I guess segment. We might talk a little bit more about this, but so I had the pleasure of just re-listening to our last podcast, and it reminded me of where we were at a year ago, where you were at a year ago. You had just turned 30 years old. You're talking about closing the chapter of your 20s.
Yep.
So I guess like thinking in broad spectrum over the last year, like how do you feel you've grown over the last year? And I know the past 2 months are kind of a little bit of a wrench in that, because it felt like it's been a year. Yeah,
it's not a wrench. It's been the biggest obstacle I faced in my life. And how I feel like I've grown is like, I'm more aware, and I guess just the word would be sensitive to others. Now, you know, like I've had, you know, friends that I've been friends with for a long time. And one person in particular that just like, it meant a lot to me that they reached out. He dealt with extreme panic when we worked together at the fruit stand. And it was like one of those people where like I always really liked him. We always got along, but I was always like, man, he's a little on edge. Like, what's up? You know? And he was one of the first people to reach out to me and just be like, hey, like, I understand completely what you're going through. Like, I'm so sorry you're going through it. And it's been, like, I get it. Like, I deal with that all the time, and, you know, that overwhelming fear. And that really meant a lot to me for him to reach out and just give me those words. But I guess, you know, this has probably been a huge lesson for me to sort of soften around some of that stuff and realize that there's different perspectives, there's different people in the world, and, you know, whether your views, whether it's, you know, politically, religiously, whatever, like, it doesn't matter. We're all humans having a human experience here. And at the end of the day, that's what's most important, is to recognize that there's another human, not what they go by, not who they are, not who they identify as. Like, what's most important is that they're a human having a human experience, and you should have love for them. You should have compassion for them because they're brave. anybody that wakes up and decides to show up for their life, and not check out when things get really hard, or when things are easy. Acknowledge they're having a human experience. Acknowledge that they're not perfect. They have flaws, and that they're just doing the best they can with what they got. That's been huge for me, and it's shifted my perspective on life. So even though this has been one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life, I've also pulled out a lot of nuggets of wisdom, of humility, of just slowing down. So I'm really thankful for that. I'm really grateful, even though that this has been really scary. Like, I'm grateful that my perspective has shifted in those ways, because I feel like a better person because of it. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. And then, what's your intention for the next year?
Really want to focus on health and well-being, and not just the physical part, but the mental part. Really want to get myself to a place where I'm excited to wake up every day. I'm not living in fear. I want to wake up and feel like, for those of you that play video games or get your dopamine hit from looking at TikTok or something like that, or whatever it is, whatever you're, watching The Bachelor, I don't know, whatever it is that you look forward to in life. Like, my goal is, like, I want to wake up with that passion in life. I want to wake up with the passion of, like, it's another day. I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited to move. I'm so excited to accomplish what I set out to accomplish. And I know that's a huge goal. And I know that it's going to take a lot of, like, uncovering the trauma of the past, uncovering, like, the things that can bring someone down to reach that goal. So I know it's going to be a lot of hard work, but, I want to be the best version of myself moving forward and do the best I can. So, if I can get to a place where I'm waking up every day and I feel excited to go take my dog for a walk, excited to go play basketball, excited to work on awesome wedding videos, or whatever I am doing, setting out for that next goal, right? Like, I really want to be present in life. And I think what I realize is, it's really easy to check out. It's really easy to escape. And that's sometimes needed, getting lost in a good book, a good video game, competition, whatever your outlet is, like, that is absolutely needed. However, I want to treat my life like it's an RPG, like, I'm constantly working to better my life, my situation, the people around me, my community, those sort of things. And in a video game, that's really, like, the reward. That's the crumb they drop along the trail. In a role-playing game, is you're building something. You're constantly working towards something. And I really want to shift my perspective of how I live my life to be more of that, to live more fulfilled, more present. And, I got a long way to go, but, I think that's something I've realized out of this situation for sure.
I love that. And I feel like I can relate to what you just said. And I know a lot of other people will too. So, All right, Dave. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully we can have you on again soon. If anybody has any questions for us, feel free to message us. You can find us on Instagram at A Bit From Within, or our website, abitfromwithin.com.
Yep.
We'd be happy to chat with you or...
Absolutely. And just one last disclaimer. If you are dealing with any sort of panic, anxiety, health related, whether it's health or not health related, I am here to talk. You can reach out to me on Instagram. We can exchange phone numbers. Like, even having someone that's gone through it and listening to you, or just acknowledging what you're going through, dealing with panic or anxiety or just any of that, can be just a breath of fresh air. So I just wanted to put that out there, that, like, if anybody needs that, DM us, I'm more than happy to chat, whatever. Yeah. But, I know it can be really tough and scary to go through it. And if, somebody that you're close to doesn't understand it, it can be really tough, because it can feel like you're isolated and alone. So luckily I have Felicia here, who has dealt with her own anxiety and things like that. So she was able to sort of help guide me. But, yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there, that, like,
you're not alone.
You're not alone. Reach out if you need us. Like, we're all just humans having a human experience. So
absolutely. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today, and until next time.